So I think what is important also to understand is the vulnerability. Who is vulnerable and why? So we can understand why children, but also like people with disability. So imagine children with disability, how vulnerable they are. As a counselor, it's always important to understand the context. So the social context, the economical, and cultural context, of course, because we know that nowadays with the economical context is really hard. It puts a hardship on families. That's also a factor where family violence can be enhanced, right? Multi-generational household make it be complicated. The dynamics, right? And all the cultural expectations, loyalty, gender roles in a comedy, that is a lot of pressure, and caregiver can silence victims. All of these play a role. It's important to address systemic bias because of our young people, because of their age, having no family supporting them. They need that extra support, because they have a lot of stress and they have nobody to do things with them, and that can be harder for them to get help or to get results with systemic institutions, as we know. The culture and the norms that we are embedded in are not made for people who are not ticking the heteronormative box, and our violence can look differently for us because of our gender identity, and often we are not represented in marketing, like how violence can look like. We know for straight heteronormative norms, but it's not often talked about for our community and for young people when that's about family violence. I like to add that it's very important in this space to be intersectional. As a facilitator for the Queer Migrant Project, young migrant survivors of the FSV did share with us that often in services they had to cosplay because they were not seeing themselves, like service don't see themselves as a whole, but as one identity only. Some had to pretend to be straight looking, and that's very traumatic. As victim of trauma, this is a non-linear narrative. So, we're gonna be in and out of the trauma. We can't always talk about trauma, but I think it's important to acknowledge that this trauma memory is not always chronological. So slowly we put the pieces together. Slowly we paint the whole picture so they can have a bit more acceptance and compassion for themselves. And slowly we talk about how then we can then build a new narrative, right? Build a new narrative for themselves. Also, there is really a hard time for young people when they feel really ambivalent about their relationship with their parents. It's really hard. They feel torn because they love their parents. And we have to accept and acknowledge that it's normal to love your parents, even though your parents can be the perpetrator of violence. And that's the hard part, right? How can you grow and separate yourself? Because at some point they feel that when they're ready, and only, of course, that's really step by step. We are led by our young people, and whenever they're ready, but they know at some point they're gonna have to leave this violence. And what does it mean then? That's losing also people that they're supposing to love. And it's really the hard part when the family members are the abuser. What we talk also in session, and I think it's important to acknowledge that, is their internalized beliefs that don't belong to them. Because when you grow up with transphobic parents, when you grow up with people that believe into yourself that are not yours, because it plays a role against yourself. So there's also this inner fight that we talk about. How can we shift from your internalized transphobic belief or internalized any internalized beliefs that are against it? And I think like that's not just, that's for every young person, in a sense that when you become your own adult. And I always say young people, like, when you grow up, like, it's hard, but you're gonna become your own parent. So how can you become this parent that you always wanted to have, that you didn't get to start with? And I think that's how we start the work and the self-love part of things. It is a forever journey to accept parts of ourselves that don't look like everyone else. There are a lot of queer people have disabilities, and it's a gift. So we're trying to look at it as a gift, but of course they're gonna see that as a deficit, because I'm not like everyone else. I can't go to loud spaces, I can't this, I can't that. But also we're trying to then see who they are instead of what they're not. So I think the normality, I want to have a normal life, I want to have a normal family, the comparison always is also play a role, in this space. And I think lastly, like the big thing, and so it's about relationship, it's about connection. It's about understanding. When you're a victim of family violence or intimate partner violence, I think it's also rebuilding what is a healthy relationship, rebuilding that narrative and understanding, maybe start with ourselves. What's our relationship with ourselves? But also, as any young person, they want to connect, they want to have friends, they want to have lovers, they want to explore, and it's fair. But so they really always ask me to work on, a lot of young people ask me to work on, how can I know when it's a healthy relationship? How can I be a friend with my disability? There's a lot of barrier with that. So we talk a lot about this because they often feel isolated. Because we all need sometimes an external help. Who can be a neutral person, who can be somebody that don't know nothing about the family or is not connected, and that's where the work starts. And when you can reach out and be brave and courageous to do that, I know it takes a lot of effort, and it's important to acknowledge that. But I think like anyone that wants to reach out, they're already winning.